The roll call.
Councilman Daly,
Here.
Councilman Duper,
Present.
Councilman Popescu, Mayor Pro Tempore Lenard,
Present.
Mayor Rigsby.
Here.
Thank you.
We could go into foreign languages. Okay, next we have our closed session report from our city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Council was in closed session on a pending litigation matter as identified on the agenda. Council received a report as to the status of that appeal matter, and there's no action to report at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if you'll stand with me and join us in our invocation of Pledge of Allegiance, led by Councilman Popescu.
Let us bow our head. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the opportunity you've given us to be a part of this wonderful city. We ask that you be with us tonight, bless us, and help us to make decisions that will be beneficial for everyone here. In Jesus' name, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any additional or deletional items?
No, sir.
Okay, time for oral reports from the public. Would anybody like to speak on non-agenda items? I have no requests, and I see no one standing up. So we'll go to our first item, which is a presentation, a bittersweet moment, but a moment of celebration of the contribution of James Shipp for his service to the Loma Linda Historical Commission for 18 2/3 years. That's a long time. So we have a presentation from the city. There's a plaque, and we have a presentation also from Tyler Ferrari, Senator Morrell's office. So would you like to come forward and do your presentation?
Definitely.
Thank you. So they make really nice certificates.
Alrighty. I'd like to thank the City Council for the opportunity to speak here tonight. So I think one of the great jewels of the Inland Empire is the history that we have here, dating back to the time of the missions, the gold rush, and the founding of the state. I think that it's something that's important that needs to be remembered, and I think someone like James really exemplifies that great history and just really exemplifies what it means to be part of the Loma Linda community. So on behalf of the California State Senate and Senator Mike Morrell, I want to present you with the certificate of recognition, thanking you for your service for 19 years to the city of Loma Linda and the Historical Society, and thank you for all you've done to preserve the history of Loma Linda. And then I do also want to present you with a certificate on behalf of County Supervisor Don Rao. Her representative could not make it tonight, so I want to give them that. So I want to give that to James also. So James, congratulations, and again, thank you so much for all the work you've done in the community.
Wow. And up here, our lovely Loma Linda plaque with the city seal. Thank you for your contributions to the Historical Commission 2000 to 2019, and a keychain. And come forward. And please speak.
Haven't always been invited to speak, but I will keep it short. I was involved in building a website for third grade students for the state of California about Loma Linda's history when someone, and I can't recall who it was, but someone said, "Oh, you should be on the Historical Commission. You are interested in Loma Linda history." At that point, I knew virtually nothing about our community's history. I mean, a little bit, but and so that led to volunteering to be on the commission, and I was accepted, which I was kind of flattered at the time. And it wasn't terribly long after that the then Chairman Ralph Klein suffered some health problems, and I was asked to chair the commission. I did not expect it to go on as long as it did for me to be chairman, but I feel like I leave the commission in good hands. There are certainly qualified people there who have a great deal of skill and knowledge, and I'm just so thankful for the education I've received as a part of this opportunity. I got to participate in writing a book about Loma Linda's history. The commission put on 8 annual Loma Linda history fairs, which will still continue in a somewhat different basis, but there will be one this year in May. And got to meet some of the elders of our community in interviewing them, oral history, taking photographs, gathering documents and pictures of our past. And it's been a fabulous opportunity to dive very deep into what made this community happen. And I want to thank you for supporting the commission, for listening. Whether we always came eye to eye on every decision, obviously we can't. There's many different opinions and many stakeholders in a community. But I did learn the importance of the public input through dozens of workshops and public hearings, listening to the citizens, listening to the taxpayers, listening to the people whose lives are affected by the decisions that you make. And I'm a strong believer in participatory government, where people speak and are listened to. And I want to thank you for continuing that tradition and for giving me an opportunity to serve.
Will you be involved in our 50th city anniversary celebrations in a year and a half?
I certainly will. I'll be more than happy to support it.
Good.
Yes.
We'll go to you for some ideas on what to do. We were just trying to come up with something, and we're not very good at parties.
We have a small nonprofit historical society, the Loma Linda Area Parks and Historical Society, and I remain part of that and want to be a part of the educational efforts of that organization. And so, yes, you can count on me to help in whatever way I can. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I wanted to just briefly mention that obviously we're very thankful for your service, but it's kind of opened our eyes and educated at least me about the rich history our city has. We always think of Loma Linda as the city founded LNG White, but we don't realize that it goes several hundred years before then. So it was fascinating to learn that. And just at a side note, my parents the other day happened to find a book that actually details the history of Loma Linda. And actually the book was printed, I want to say, sometime in the mid-'80s, late 80s. And there's a ton of pictures in there about just the historical background of the city. And it's a huge, multiple sections about how the city was founded and the various committees that were created that eventually it created the city government. Fascinating story, and all the players involved. And there's lots of pictures of prior city councils and everything all the way up to, I think, late 80s. So anyway, this city has a rich history that we forget sometimes because we're just getting involved in living our daily lives. So it's always important to be reminded about the history. So anyway, well, just wanted to thank you again for all your time and energy you spend on this.
Thank you. Yeah, it has those pictures from long, long, long ago, back when Milford was on the council. Okay. Our next item is public hearing, city attorney.
Well, Conrad and I think we'll jointly present on this. Maybe let Conrad go first with whatever comments he has.
And then he can correct me as we go forward. So this is we'd like to open a public hearing for ordinance addressing small cell technology type cell sites. These are basically many cell towers that go on top of electrical poles, power poles, street light poles. State law requires that we have an expedited process for approval and that we do not, both state law and federal law, that we do not have unreasonable or unnecessary prohibitions on these sites. So the ordinance creates a framework that allows an expedited approval process, pre-planned architectural designs and requirements, and requirements that sites be located on existing poles and that meet current architectural and design needs. So if we do have special light designs, that they have to meet those standards in those specific areas. For the most part, the ordinance reflects the requirements by state law and defines the city's latitude as far as enforcing that and implementing the small cell sites.
Yes. Actually, there's some new rulings from the Federal Communications Commission, which we're attempting to implement with some reasonable design guidelines that are consistent with the authority that we retain as a city. To a large extent, we've been preempted by federal law in this respect, but we do want to do what we can to regulate and work with these companies, in particular in the public right-of-way, which they now have new rights to roll out these new small broadcast devices for the 5G network that they're building. So this is the wave of the future, and we're trying to stay in front of it a little bit. There's short time frames that are allowed. As of April 15th, if we don't have any regulations in place, we lose any rights to regulate, but until we do adopt it. So for now, we are conducting the public hearing on the ordinance, and this would be the first reading or introduction. Final action would be at the next meeting, which I believe is scheduled for April 9th. The resolutions that go with the ordinance, R-2019-07, includes the design guidelines for small cell facilities within the public right-of-way, and we would adopt these tonight and apply them to any pending applications pursuant to our existing ordinance, which is not really designed specifically for these small cell facilities, but we do have existing wireless communication regulations in our municipal code, and so we would adopt these interim regulations pursuant to that authority. And then the third item is the resolution establishing permit fees, appeal fees, and so forth related to these facilities that would go in the public right-of-way. So with that, I don't have anything to add to what's in the staff report, but recommend approval of the ordinance and the two resolutions.
So this would be for public hearing and first reading, and with vote and final reading at the next meeting on April 9th, right?
Correct.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I will open the public hearing for item 2A. Would the public like to come forward and speak? Yes.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the council, and staff. My name is Julio Figueroa. I'm the Director of External Affairs for AT&T, and also a class of 1994 Banning High School with Sonia, one of your members here that's here today. We went to school together, so it's nice to see some folks we went to school with. So I just left the city of Riverside, and I've had about 20 discussions just in the Inland Empire regarding AT&T's interest to deploy small cells in the region. And the number I always like to share to start off my comments is 370,000%. And that is the increase of our data usage since 2007 when the iPhone launched. And before that, it was all talking and texting, and now it's video streaming, high data usage, multiple devices that customers have. This is the reason why we're responding to that need. What is AT&T's vision in regards to the deployment, at least for Loma Linda? Very small right now. We had a meeting with Conrad at the beginning of last year to just talk about what our designs are looking like, to see if these designs are something that the city of Redlands would be welcoming. So we are looking forward to sharing what AT&T's designs will look like. I think you guys will be very impressed of what we're doing, and I think in general the industry, because I've had an opportunity to see the designs from the other carriers as well, and you generally will only have to worry about 4 carriers, which is Verizon, T-Mobile, Sprint, and us. And Sprint and T-Mobile right now are currently in merger talks, so that might remove one player out of the folks that are going to be submitting the applications here in the city or just across the country. But generally, what happens is the industry will need to deploy in an area where there's high traffic, high populated areas, and I guarantee you it's probably going to be around the hospital. It's going to probably be around the university. It's going to be areas where downtown, mall areas, high traffic areas where there's a need for not only coverage, but it's a capacity issue. And you might run into these issues when you're out and you see full bars on your phone, but yet it's taking a while for the video to come through or that message to come through. It's because it's a capacity issue. You have a lot of customers from that company that are on that network, and it's slowing it down. So this is the industry's response to that, is increasing the current capacity for 4G LTE and then basically preparing for the next evolution of the network, which is 5G. So generally what's going to happen is for cities that own their street lights, we still have to enter an agreement. It's a master license agreement to allow us to basically attach to these street lights. For AT&T, I think in general for the industry, we're going to have to pull that street light out and replace it with something similar. Hide all of our equipment inside that pole. When I say equipment, that means all the cables, the fiber, and then at the very top of that street light, it's going to sit a canister that rises flush with the street light, and that's going to be your cellular equipment for small cells. Also, we work with Edison to get a denial letter as well, so that eliminates a metered pedestal, so that'll be one less piece of equipment on the public right-of-way. And there's a tariff rate for the power as well. Very low power to power up these small cells, but we're doing everything we can to address any concerns that jurisdictions have in regards to deployment of these on public right-of-way. We believe that the designs are least intrusive in regards to aesthetics, and we look forward to when AT&T is ready to deploy out here to work with the city on these designs that is going to improve coverage, capacity, and do it without upsetting any customers in regards to what the looks of these small cells are. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions as well in regards to the deployment.
So what happens to the light that's on the pole now? You just put the light back on your pole?
Yeah, yep, that pole's going to look pretty much the same as it does now. It's just the extension top of that. We put in a brand new pole. Mm-hmm. The height of the luminaire stays at where it's at now, and all it is an extension of the street light where the cell equipment is going to sit on top. So, but we are replacing that, but we're pulling it out and putting one new one that looks pretty close to what's already on there, and then you'll see an extension part at the top that's where the cellular equipment is going to be sitting on. That's your antenna.
So you're not going to install all new LED lights for us or anything like that?
I would say don't, man, I'd hate to say don't spend that money now, because you're going to get 4 carriers that are going to want to come into your city and replace the street lights now. And if you guys can hold off in a year to spend that money, we're probably going to replace a lot of those street lights with whatever light you want on there. So that's one less pole you're going to have to worry about having to spend on it. That's something to consider, right? Our plans here in Loma Linda are probably going to be 3rd or 4th quarter of this year to deploy, so they're still probably about a year's away, and I don't know if any other carrier has approached the city, but if you guys can hold off another year, you'll probably save a lot of money in having the industry just put that up when they're putting in that new pole.
What is the horizontal separation between your towers?
So when we put a street light up, there is no co-location. So you can have one carrier for a street light, and that's hence to keep the height at about 35 feet on most of these street lights. You don't want a 60-foot street light to allow for another carrier; it just won't look right. So we don't anticipate co-locating on a street light. The coverage on a small cell is 700 to 1,500 feet in radius, so you're not gonna see AT&T's poles right next to each other because we just don't need it. And the cost of these poles are about $100,000 for construction and application and everything else. So we have to be very strategic on where we're spending this because they are expensive for us just in the construction of them. But it's still a good coverage area. We don't anticipate building it at intersections. And we are sensitive to historical districts with those specific lights. And if we can't provide a design that looks just like it, then we understand why we can't be on those locations. So we have to provide another example of maybe what the city would like. But if it's not, then we understand why we wouldn't be able to build on those streetlights.
So if you get knocked down, car hit the street light pole, you would come out and replace it?
We got it, yeah, because not only now is the light out, right, but so is coverage. So we'd probably go out there the next day, or if it's early in the day, we'll probably go out there the same day. Generally, what I've been seeing on these agreements is the city will hold a couple of these poles for us. And if you guys can get to replacing that pole quicker, then you guys just put the pole up, and then we'll come back and do all the wiring for the cell part of it. But that's all part of the master license agreement. If a pole gets knocked down, that's all negotiated in the agreement. Many factors in that agreement. So
Jarb, how far apart are typical light poles?
About 250 feet apart.
So about every sixth pole, you'll put one in?
And it's stagnant.
Well, we're going to put one where we actually need it, and then that pole will provide about 700 to 1,500 feet of coverage. Now, if we need another one,
is that radius or
radius?
diameter?
That's radius. Yeah, that's
okay.
in a circular. Yeah, so we're not planning on putting one and then one across the street. We just won't need it because that pole right there will provide enough coverage. Now, you might get in a block, you might have four light poles that are being serviced by every carrier, one for each carrier. But I doubt you're going to need one next to each other, at least from the same carrier.
Right, so we kept one for AT&T and next one for T-Mobile, Verizon. So
yeah,
and then you probably won't see another one from anybody for another couple blocks if it's even needed, right? It's only a response to what's needed in that specific area. If 90% of those customers are Verizon in that area, AT&T and the other carriers won't need to put one in there. It'll just be a Verizon site.
So in areas where there's no 5G, are you planning to keep 4G for?
Yeah, so
if you go
in
out
full transparency in regards to small cells, right now the current deployment is going to just be addressing current 4G and the LTE coverage and capacity. When 5G comes out here, it's already launched in LA. Our designs are basically attaching two radios about 1 by 2 feet in diameter, and putting them on each side of that pole, and that will tell you that it's 5G. That is our current design for the deployment of 5G on current small cells that we've deployed out in LA. We call it the Princess Leia design. It's just two radios, one on each side of the pole. And unfortunately, when the city is developing these design standards, there's not one carrier out there right now that can design shrouding of those radios. You shroud them, you're going to lose 5G coverage because it's millimeter wave. So when those design standards are being developed, there's got to be some flexibility in regards to 5G because you can't shroud those radios. You can shroud the 4G LTE, but you can't shroud the 5G. And then we'd be more than happy to be a part of those discussions and provide any input from the industry as those standards are being developed.
Nobody's got any questions.
All right.
So
well, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other public comment? Okay, then I'll close the public hearing. What's the pleasure of the council?
I'll move it.
I'll second. Do we need to identify by name what we're moving?
Can we do them all three at the same time?
I don't see why not.
Yes, they're directly related.
Okay.
So it's all first reading. And
Well,
setting a date?
It's first reading on the ordinance. The two resolutions you are taking final action tonight, they will coordinate with the later ordinance when it's finalized. But for now, the design guidelines will become effective immediately. pursuant to our existing wireless communication ordinance.
Okay. So there was
for that
one-
reason, you may want to, because one is not a final action, you may want to take the ordinance separately first.
Okay, then is the motion for item A only?
Well, we could start out that way, yep.
Okay, it's in
I'll
a
second.
second? Okay. Any further discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, item A is approved. Now, what about B and C?
I'll make a motion for B and C.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, it's approved. A consent calendar?
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, it's approved. Reports of councilmen. Reports of officers. I'll do a report of councilmen. I spoke at the Loma Linda Korean Church dedication. They've been open for over 6 months, but they had their big dedication and ribbon cutting. And it's really nice to have a church that for years, for 45 years, was in Grand Terrace and called themselves the Loma Linda Korean Adventist Church. They're finally in Loma Linda. But the post office, true to form, calls it Redlands. They just can't win. And they're still in the county because we haven't annexed them yet. But it was nice to welcome them to Loma Linda after all these years. Any other reports of councilmen or officers? Hearing none, then the city council is adjourned, and we'll move to our successor agency. Are there any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
Consent calendar?
Move it.
Second.
Motion is second. Further discussion? Opposition? Hearing none. It's approved. Then we're adjourned. And then the Housing Authority, any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
Public comment for the successor agency. Hearing none. That's re-adjourned. Now back to the Housing Authority. Any reports from the public on any non-agenda items? Hearing none. Consent calendar.
Move it.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, it's approved. Chair and member reports. Hearing none. Reports of officers. Hearing none. We're adjourned. Thank you very much. That concludes our evening.